Meaning is something Latin and Greek teachers engage with every day with every student. What does this word mean? What does this sentence mean in context? Or broadly, what's the meaning of all of this? Why are we here? Why are we studying these peoples and these languages? We started this conference pondering the question, Quem ad finem? And so many speakers explored such varied meanings of that question that we can all return home with a new understanding and a refocused purpose for our work. There's a more obvious end we are approaching, Hunc finem, the final session of our 2023 American Classical League Institute. And we are endlessly fortunate to end our time with a closing keynote address from singer-songwriter Dylan Connor. Dylan's musical career started around age 9, when he had the good fortune to live next door to record producer Terry Cohen, who not only had some of the biggest musical names of the 1980s dropping by the house, but also had 2 sons who would invite Dylan next door to play, or perhaps at that age to play on the full array of instruments in the basement. I don't know if that's fair, Dylan. But happily, as he continued to grow as a musician in high school, his father suggested that he take Latin, and lucky for us, he did. His journey through music and classics would be forever intertwined, and in 1997 he graduated from Skidmore College with both a band, M. Headphone, and a degree summa cum laude in English and Latin. From 1998 to 2003, he moved from Connecticut to San Francisco and toured with M. Headphone. As a burgeoning musician, this meant, of course, that he needed also, well, means. We don't often hear in the classical tradition about whether perhaps bards like Demodocus in the Odyssey needed a day job between gigs at Alcinous's palace. I'm not sure. Perhaps. But Dylan did. And he found a want ad for teaching Latin at the Academy School in Berkeley and has been teaching Latin ever since. By 2004, Dylan had returned to Stratford, Connecticut, and had begun teaching at Bunnell High School, where he would later be honored with Stratford's 2016 Teacher of the Year Award. And he would continue there until this June, when he accepted a position for the coming fall, teaching grades 6 through 9 at Fairfield Country Day School. If you haven't heard any of his Latin grammar songs, you're missing out. In 2004, he also released his first solo album, Plug In, a work full of sometimes joyful, sometimes wistful reflections on the meaning of what is really important. The track, Just Begun, reminds us that love is focused on both the hard times and the fun, and that a love that's done has only just begun. One Life to Blow not only offers us a welcome and familiar invitation to seize the day, thanks Dylan, but also urges us to let it go. Sorry, Disney, Dylan beat you to it. Yeah. Dylan has also returned with new meaning to his life, having married his wife Reem, who was born in Damascus, Syria, one of the cradles of the Roman elite, like Publius, Julia Domna, Lucian, and the Emperor Philip. 2 children would soon follow, and many of us know all that that means. Unfortunately, Dylan was led to a new meaning for his work and for his music in 2011, when the ongoing civil war broke out in Syria, and his family and their friends encountered firsthand the atrocities that followed. He released Blood Like Fire, Songs for Syria, in 2014, and many of his songs were picked up 6,000 miles away, giving inspiration to people suffering often the unthinkable and letting them know that people far away knew what it meant to be in their situation. He continues his activist work through the Syrian American Council, where he chairs the Public Relations Committee, and his wife Reem is the treasurer. Both have led missions to the Syrian borders of Turkey and Jordan to provide meaningful relief to the victims of the war. Like the songs of Demodocus that repeatedly made Odysseus sob, many of Dylan's strike a solemn chord, whether commemorating the death of Giuth Matar in Man of Peace from the soundtrack of the 2016 film Little Gandhi, or reflecting on the more common loss of loved ones to automobile accidents. His works help us make meaning out of a world beset with moral ambiguities, inexplicable atrocities, and senseless losses. Even Odysseus reminds Demodocus that although his songs cause pain, he praises him no less. Like any bard, Dylan always offers us a glimmer of hope. As he says in Bring You Back, I can't bring you back to life, but I will meet you in the light. I will try to make this right. We are so fortunate to be able to end on such a high note. Please help me welcome our closing keynote speaker, Dylan Connor.
Thank you. Wow. Pat, I appreciate all those thoughtful words. Salvete omnes. First and foremost, I want to thank the ACL Institute for giving me this opportunity to address you all. Addressing you all takes on new meaning as I stand here with a select group of brave travelers who took the 30-second walk from building to building before the warning was given not to move. Thank you. I have a nice small audience here, and I've begged them not to fall asleep during my speech. So I also want to take the opportunity to thank you, my esteemed colleagues, in treasuring and teaching the classics today. When I first saw the email with this most unexpected invitation, I thought it was a prank from some old high school friends. But after rereading the invitation a couple of times, I realized it was indeed legitimate. So let me say that I am very much humbled to be with you all today. Most importantly, I want to acknowledge the love and support of my family, my mom, Nancy, my dad, David, my wife, Reem, my daughter, Fayruz, and my son, Jude. They were both born 5 years apart from each other to the day, July 8th. So they have a birthday coming up, 10 and 15 this coming week. So that's a happy thought. So, once upon a time, I found myself in the presence of an old wise man. His name was Harold. He was in his late 80s, with voluminous white hair and a beard. I had attended some meetings with him, and his words resonated with me as if from some great source of truth. I only met him a handful of times, and on the last time, he stood very close to me, and he looked me in the eyes, and he said, Dylan, do you want to know what it's all about? I said, yeah. What? Harold, tell me. He said, one word. Connections. Connections. And I think that's what you see. The hint of my answer to Quem ad finem, is in the picture behind the words here. Connections. So, in the 15 years plus since he said that to me, its implications only became apparent in considering what I would say to you today, just how essential awareness of connections is. Essential to curating and living a rich and meaningful life. So in considering the theme of Quem ad finem, I want to argue that being a student and teacher of the classics not only helps one to be profoundly aware of the thread connecting one period of history to another, but also aware of the consciousness that connects us all as sentient beings. Specifically, I will venture to demonstrate how the classics have allowed me to both create and recognize vital connections, 1, as a teacher, 2, as a humanitarian, and 3, as a musician. One Latin word for connection I would like to hone in on is contextus, which also means fabric. Obviously, there's a strong connection between contextus and the English words text and context, which refer to written words, narratives, something woven together, like a textile, a web. One of the most honorable things a Roman matrona could do in the eyes of ancient Roman society, as proven by epitaphs, is to be a spinner of wool. Telling a story is sometimes referred to as spinning a yarn. So to read a story is to gather up that yarn that has been spun. Legere, to read, also to gather. A life in the classics helps one to see threads that are connecting us to each other, both as people on the planet together contemporaneously, and to each other through the chasm of time. The living words from the ancient world connect us here to each other, and to the people and culture who wrote them with timeless immediacy. Perhaps you will feel a connection to my story of becoming a Latin teacher. When I was a freshman at Fairfield High School in Connecticut, I was taking Spanish as my foreign language class, and I was struggling. During sophomore year, my Spanish teacher, Mrs. Virgilac, said that if Juan, that was my Spanish class name because my middle name is John, if Juan could get an A- for the marking period, she would take the whole class out to lunch. The pressure was on. I tried, and I tried, and I got a B+. She decided it was close enough, and she took us out to Eduardo's Italian restaurant. I still remember Mrs. Virgilac smoking a cigarette in the restaurant with a fellow classmate. O tempora, o mores. When the year ended, I decided I did not want to pursue Spanish any further. My father, a poet, a photographer, and former English teacher turned psychoanalyst, took me aside and said, I know you want to make and take as many music courses as possible in the coming years. I won't give you any grief about that if you agree to take 2 years of Latin. Sounded great, except for the fact I didn't know what Latin was. I agreed, and I started Latin 1 as a junior with Mr. Baracco, a kind man of short stature with thin blonde hair and a mustache. We used the Jenny text. It was a traditional class. We went through the exercises, the reading passages in the book, and we learned how to say things like Ranai malai in agris sunt. The sentences were silly. I loved his Ranai malai thing. It just cracked me up. The sentences were silly, but the structure spoke to me. I liked that it all fit together like a puzzle. He also taught derivatives, which I thought were nifty. Mr. Baracco was sweet. He had a dry, sarcastic sense of humor. I remember enjoying the passages at the end of the practice national Latin exams that he would give us. Those little passages with the multiple choice readings, the comprehension questions. And when we took the national Latin exam, I got a medal and a certificate. Alas, I was good at Latin. In my junior year, I ended up tutoring a senior in my Latin 2 class. She was struggling and felt the teacher didn't like her. I had never done anything like this and enjoyed the experience. Not just because maybe I had a crush on her, but it felt good to know that I was able to help someone else gain clarity on this subject that I enjoyed. Looking back, I was forming linguistic and human connections through Latin. My dad's good friend, a Buddhist tax accountant named Larry Waterbury, whose office had no electronics at all, except maybe an answering machine he didn't know how to use, was over one night for dinner. And he said, "Dylan, do you want to make a lot of money or do you want to be an interesting person?" I thought, and then said, "Well, I want to be an interesting person." I've never been much of a money guy. Ask my wife. It's disastrous. He said, "Then go to a liberal arts college. It is liberal arts that allow one to make connections across disciplines." I got accepted into Skidmore College, a liberal arts college. I wanted to study both English literature and music. I intended on being a music major. After all, I had put in 2 years of Latin required by my dad. However, within the first week of college, I decided that I didn't want music to be my homework. I loved music too much for it to be my homework, and I decided I'd rather study literature and poetry to improve my lyric writing. I would stay purposefully ignorant of musical theory and jazz so that I could keep my rock and roll spirit intact. I tested out of the first semester of basic Latin and into the second semester with Professor George, a new adjunct professor. The class was based on Cicero's speeches against Catiline. This was a rude awakening coming from Jenny's Latin text. It was hard. Remember, this is before the internet. I needed a grammar book and a dictionary, and it was slow going. She was teaching us complex grammar such as supines, passive periphrastic, and ablative absolutes. Her favorite was the ablative absolute. If I answered ablative absolute to any question she posed, I had a good chance of being correct. She usually assigned 20 lines per night, and I could do about 10 lines an hour. I was a bit OCD about it all, and I couldn't leave any word unaccounted for. Sometimes my roommates would find me in tears. That's what I both loved and hated about Latin. It all fit. No word was a throwaway. Even in a sentence that's a paragraph long, the words are connected, though not necessarily in a linear fashion for English speakers. It wasn't until a seminar in Catullus with Professor Meacham that the magic happened. Catullus. He seemed so present, so timeless, so direct. Professor Meacham was not pulling any punches either. She was not sugarcoating any of the words, and it was both awkward and exciting to hear my teacher saying four-letter words on a regular basis. College was cool. Learning to scan poetry for the first time put a whole new rhythmic musical layer onto my Latin experience. It also made me feel competent when the translations were stumping me. In my junior year, I studied abroad in Ireland at the University College Cork. I took a seminar in Horace, in which I was one of 2 students who met in what seemed to be an attic space of a very old building on the outskirts of campus. The professor was a pleasant man with big ears. It was all very Harry Potter in retrospect. But wait, the famous saying, carpe diem, actually lived in one of these poems. In the context of this poem, abundant with images of nature, the straining of wine, pumice on either side of a wintry ocean, I understood that seize was pluck, like plucking the day as if it were a perfectly ripe piece of fruit to be wondered at, consumed, enjoyed, not a piece of flesh or a drip of juice wasted. Connections. Poem textus. Back at Skidmore, in mythology course my senior year with Professor Meacham, I wrote and recorded a rock opera based on the myth of Oedipus, called, of course, Oedipus Rocks. I wanted to bring my love of The Who's Tommy rock opera to the table. Connections. Tommy and the Who, Oedipus, you know. So I want to play now, for the first time since my senior year in college, a little bit of a song from that rock opera. All right. My name is Oedipus, but you can call me Eddie. My life's been alright in this, the royal family, but I've always felt a bit strange round mommy and daddy. Apollo says, know thyself. I think that I'm ready. Gonna go to the priestess now and ask Apollo what I'm all about. I'm gonna go to the priestess now and find out what I'm all about. The other day at the royal ball, a drunk stranger cornered me out in the hall. He said, you don't look like the king and queen at all. Apollo says, know thyself. I'm gonna heed the call. I'm gonna go to the priestess now and ask Apollo what I'm all about. I'm gonna go to Delphi now and find out what I'm all about. I'm gonna go to the priestess now. Why, thank you very much. That was a throwback. One day early in my senior year, I was working for Professor Arnish, the head of the classics program at Skidmore, and doing data entry and mail delivery. And as an aside, when I stepped into his office to see if I'd done my job for the day, he said, do you know the amount of classics courses you're taking? You could get a double major. I wasn't aware. He laid out a plan for me, and it looked good. If he had not spurred on that conversation, my life would have been completely different. For it was the fact that I had a degree in classics that allowed me to apply for and get the part-time job teaching middle school Latin at the Academy School in Berkeley that Pat mentioned before. In 1998, I was 22 years old, and I had a flaming red punk rock hairdo and several piercings. I remember the first morning going to school, getting in my car, looking at myself in the rearview mirror, and taking out the piercings and putting my hair down, parting it in the middle, putting my glasses on, and driving off to school. The little classroom I was given was a rickety, bare bones room. There were copies of Jenny and of a book I had never seen called Latin via Ovid, and a book called Ecce Romani. I was given the good luck nod by the headmaster, and that was it. I was off and running. I was nervous. I was hot. We were upstairs, no AC, and the kids tested me. And I think we've all been there. So, let me just give you a new slide here. That work? No. I'm pressing the arrow as I was told. Oh. I pressed that arrow, trying to give you a new slide, a new visual here. Ah, okay, great, thank you. So, on to Quem ad finem, to what end? Teaching. I spent 5 years at the Academy School teaching 6th through 8th grade Latin while living in south of Market District in San Francisco, playing and rehearsing relentlessly with my band. The Academy School was a pretty magical place. We made some fun movies, the students and I, like a reimagined version of the Perseus myth, which had me driving the students around to different locations, like a lake for the Kraken scene, in the school van, or the crawl space under a student's house to film the labyrinth scene. And in the myth of Theseus, I connected with the kids I connected with the kids in ways I didn't think I could, and finally solidified my Latin. There's nothing like getting a teaching job to make it abundantly clear how little one knows about a certain subject. Since I am a musician, I started to come up with songs and chants to convey the basic declensions and conjugations to appeal to those multiple intelligences of my students. Connections between this music thing and Latin and my students. Contextus. So I'm going to give you a taste of some of my grammar songs. And just click through. All right, we'll keep it there. Obviously, I have no idea what I'm doing with the slides. Okay, so this is a great Latin 1 number. I'll sing it through once, and maybe you can sing it with me the second time through. This is for the personal endings of our verbs. O or M means I, S means you, T means he, she, or it, us means we, tis means y'all, and T means they, and that's it. O or M means I, S means you, T means he, she, or it, moose means we, tis means y'all, and T means they, and that's it. O or M means I, S means you, T means he, she, or it, moose means we, tis means y'all, and T means they, and that's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. And now, you get the first declension down, you think, wow, I did it. But then the second declension comes along. And you feel kind of down. Wait a second, I got to learn another declension? You got the blues. You've got the second declension blues. I got the second declension blues, from my head down to my shoes. I got the second declension blues, from my head down to my shoes. Oh, and if you don't memorize these endings, you got a lot to lose. It goes us, e, o, e, or, mis, os, es. It goes us, e, o, e, or, mis, os, es. That's right. I got the second declension blues, and I just can't rest in peace. This one's a little nostalgic. Think back to when you first learned the fourth declension. Say, I remember when we would decline the fourth declension in Latin. You know the endings are just so fine. They sound smooth just like satin. When we said oos, oos, ooey, ooh. Oos, ooh, me bus, oosy bus. Oos, oos, ooey, ooh. Oos, ooh, me bus, oosy bus. Say, I know this declension might be brand new. You must remember it always. Every one of them needs a you, just like a sandwich needs mayonnaise. When we say ooh, Thank you. I can't figure out the slide thing. Okay. Oh yeah? I can click. Oh, awesome. Okay, so here's some more student connections from Bunnell High School. This was Connecticut State Latin Day. Good crowd there. And here are the senior Latin 4 students. And it's small class, wonderful class. They had made some Aeneid posters that they were standing in front of. But in my former school, the seniors got toga privileges. So they made their own togas, and there they are, sporting their togas. All right. So the students loved the songs. And to this day, those songs have helped students remember their grammar, probably hundreds of students. I've had many former students tell me it helped them in college classes. This note from a student I've never met takes it to another level of contextus. Dear Mr. Connor, my name is Campbell Dixon. You likely don't know me, as I'm not even from Connecticut, but from New Jersey. I recently attended the University of Vermont, where I had the good fortune of becoming friends with a former student of yours, Chris Chabla. Chris and I would often study Latin together, as he enrolled in both Latin 1 and 2. He exposed me to the songs you made to help students remember the declensions, and ever since, I cannot help but remember them. I'm not exactly sure how to say what I want to say, but here it goes. I want to sincerely thank you for your dedication to this beautiful field, and beyond that, your tireless efforts in helping ignite the same passion in students which you possess yourself. I am sure you already knew how strongly your influence was on your students. I just thought it would mean a lot to you to know that your kind actions are spreading out into the world, impacting people you've never met. Wow, wow, wow. So thank you to Campbell for that incredible vote of confidence. So in 2003, the band moved back to the East Coast from San Francisco, and I bid adieu to the Academy School, which was not easy. I ended up getting recruited by Bunnell High School in Stratford, Connecticut, to teach Latin 1, 2, 3, and 4. And at the same time, I had met and fallen in love and married a beautiful woman from Damascus, Syria, who was studying at the University of Bridgeport. Because I was going to teach public school now, I had to get my master's simultaneously, and so I started attending Fairfield University's secondary education program at night while teaching during the days. Anyone here done the master's program while teaching? Okay, good. I remember I was teaching Latin 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I remember trying to submit and barely succeeding in making the deadline for my final exam for my master's degree from a smoky internet cafe in Damascus in 2009. So, speaking of Damascus and Syria, holy moly, the amount of classical connections there when I visited was bananas. I saw the theater at Busra, which I think I can show you here. There I am on the stage. This is one of the best preserved in the world. I saw the Great Umayyad Mosque in Damascus, which was a church before being a mosque, and before that, a temple to Apollo, as I understand it. My wife's aunt in the village of South Syria called Dara was digging up Roman coins in her backyard, for Pete's sake. Here are 2 coins that she showed me. She didn't let me have them. Good for her. She knew a valuable thing when she saw it. So it was just awesome. So in 2011, though, my life changed when my wife Reem's home country of Syria was unexpectedly swept up in the Arab Spring. The Syrian revolution started with peaceful protests and was met with the harshest possible crackdown. Reem's parents were forced to flee, and many cousins were jailed and tortured for simply standing in the streets chanting for political freedom from the oppressive Assad regime. These were cousins that I had come to know and love in my journeys to Syria before. The revolution morphed into an all-out slaughter from the government on its people, causing the biggest refugee flow since World War II, with refugees filling death boats to cross to Europe, many drowning and sharing a tragic resting place with King Aegeus. I took as much action as I could. I was desperate. I was traumatized. I couldn't believe this was being allowed to happen in the 21st century. The Assad regime was arresting and torturing thousands to death and dumping them in mass graves, massacring thousands with chemical weapons without a serious response from the international community. It was all there on YouTube for us to see. I talked to my high school students about it regularly. Many of them were riveted, as I was. I made any curricular connections I could. Syrians abound in Cambridge books 1 and 2. And the Aeneid certainly covers the plight of refugees. I wrote songs, I made videos, I went on missions to the Turkey-Syria border in 2014 to teach music to refugee children. And I then went to respond to surges of refugees at the borders of Jordan in 2018, and then again in 2020 in Turkey. I think that these photos here will show you that connections were made. This was the trip to Jordan with the children I was able to mentor in music. Oh, sorry, Turkey. I apologize, this was Turkey. And this was Jordan. These children were in what was called a free zone, but it was a buffer between Jordan and Syria, and they had medical issues, so the Jordanians were helping them. This woman here was called the Mother of Martyrs. I think she had 5 sons who were killed in the conflict. One of them a very famous leader. And this beautiful young girl here, her father had cancer, and we were visiting him in their very humble house. But I hope you see the connections. Okay. The classical myths taught me to say yes to the adventure. I know my slide went to music here, but I'm still on activism. And I'm not going to dare try to go backwards. So the myths taught me to say yes to the adventure, as scary and dangerous as it might seem, and taught me to try and participate with joy in the suffering of life. It is one thing to think about, analyze, and contemplate stories. It's another to act in the world. As Joseph Campbell said, people aren't looking for a meaning of life, but they're looking for an experience of being alive. My leap into humanitarian and advocacy work helped me to understand this distinction. And the teachings of the classics helped to guide me in these actions. Here are a few examples. In my Latin 4, I was teaching the Aeneid. In Book 2, there is so much that connects timelessly and truthfully with the Syrian war and resulting refugee crisis. Aeneas and his family running through a war zone to board a boat in order to take a harrowing journey on land and sea for an unknown new home. Taking with them the household gods, the spirit of their culture and ancestors. The shocking, inconceivable destruction of a homeland in a single night reminded me of the destruction of Syrian cities that were turned into rubble, and to which the citizens who lived there for generations would never return. In 2011, my Syrian in-laws left their homes, thinking that it would be a couple months until things calmed down with the uprisings. They never returned. A whole life, prestigious jobs. One of my aunts was the ambassador to Cyprus, ran away from it. Teaches language now in California. Luckily. Beautiful, newly renovated homes, cars, all left behind in an instant. Venit summa di es et ineloctabile tempus, dardani ai fui mustroi es fuit illet ingens. Gloria tucrorum ferus omnia Jupiter Argos, transtulit incensa danae dominantur in urbe. From Book 2. On my missions, my heart leapt out of my chest to help everybody I met. I thought I must save them, but I couldn't. My father soothed me by telling me that sometimes the best thing to do and the best way to honor someone's suffering is simply to bear witness. As I tried to grapple with my why bad things happen to good people, I thought of Dido. She is a victim of cruel fate. She is used and sacrificed as a pawn in the game of higher beings. One can't help but wonder if that is true for us all. We can't help her. And Virgil lets us know what she doesn't know, who's really in charge. But by bearing witness to her tragic fall, we honor her. Meanwhile, her tender marrow is aflame, and a silent wound is alive in her breast. Wretched Dido burns and wanders frenzied through the city, like an unwary deer struck by an arrow that a shepherd hunting with his bow has fired at from a distance in the Cretan woods, leaving the winged steel in her without knowing. Bearing Witness, or Catullus's poem 101 about the death of his brother. Multas per gentes et multa per aequora vectus, adveni as miseras, fraterat inferias, ut te postremo donarem munere mortis, et mutamne qui qualo querer cinerem. We cannot help Catullus in his grief, but we can make the journey with him and bear witness. That is sometimes the most compassionate thing we can do. Compassion, of course, from the Latin meaning to suffer with another. We connect with him because he is going through the motions in accordance with tradition, which we often do. However, like Catullus, we may wonder what the point of funerary rites are. We may wonder if there's actually a spiritual element to life, or if that concept is just something that makes us feel better about the fact of death. Is it a way to connect with the dead? He addresses his brother directly in the vocative. And I do this recently with my Uncle Jim, who passed away in October. I find myself in my basement with his guitars that I inherited, talking to him about his guitars that I'm enjoying. So I do still feel connected with him, but does this suggest that there's a spirit I'm talking to, or is it just out of need or habit? I saw Poem 101 play out in real life one day on one of my missions. A gentleman named Nasser from Dubai, without much warning, asked our car to stop at a makeshift graveyard on a border town of Syria and Turkey. He got out and walked to a grave, turns out of an immediate relative. I believe it was one of his parents. He said, "Keep the car running, I'll be back." In a few minutes he returned. He had done his duty. He had performed the rite, and we continued on with the mission. And now, Moving on to music through this guy Nasser, who I just mentioned. Nasser had come to know me in Dubai because of the songs I had written in support of the Syrian revolution. Apparently, they were getting airplay on news stations in the Arab world. Music, musika, a major force in the connections through time and between each other. The muses, inspirational goddesses of the arts. The word musika implies that this art form, more than any other perhaps, can be directly received from a divine, eternal source. The classics have afforded me a rich bank of words and references to employ in my songwriting. So here are the covers of all my albums with the year that they were released. And I'm going to start with a song. I'll play a portion of a couple songs. The first one I'll share with you is from the album Spirit Glue, here on the end. The song is called Spirit Glue as well. Glue, connectivity, spirit, and you'll hear a little mythological reference in it.
Spirit glue, that's what you are. Hi-fi radar, and I'm calling out for you. Spirit glue, giant footprint, hardcore drug stint, keeper of our hometown zoo. Spirit glue, and when you come back to me on the wings of Mercury's flying shoes, spirit glue, that's what gets me. Years pass gently since you slipped that spaceman suit. Spirit glue, in a car in 1993, we were right where we were supposed to be. Our aim was true. Spirit glue. And I'll run and I'll run and I'll run with you anywhere. And we did what we did. We were kids and life felt like one big dare. Whoa, spirit glue.
Thank you. So the classics with the line, and when you come back to me on the wings of Mercury's flying shoes, spirit glue. The classics teach me that Mercury visits us in our dreams, revealing the will of the gods. Mercury is the connective thread, the messenger between the gods of Olympus, the people of Earth, and the souls of the underworld. This next song about connections is called Kite, or I'm a Kite. Connective threads that are constraining, ones that we're clinging to. There are different types. The classics teach me that the fates are ultimately in control, an authority above the Olympians or the gods of Olympus. I'm a marionette in the master's hands. My every move obeys his command. And all the people who come to my show watch me dance beneath the lights that glow. On the stage, I play the king. But when the lights go down, I'm hanging on by a string. And I think as teachers, I hope we can all relate to that. on the stage, you know, and then when the lights go down, different people we are. So I'll play a portion of this as well. I'm a kite, and your hands are the only thing keeping me on the land. Flying high on a windy day. Now my old life feels so far away. But my friend, here's the thing. I'm hanging on by a string. Hanging on by a string. Going but not yet gone. I'm a marionette in the master's hands. My every move obeys his commands. All the people who come to my show watch me dance beneath the lights that glow. On the stage, I play the king, but when the lights go down, I'm hanging on by a string. Hanging on by a string. The show must go on. Thank you. Thank you. Si pacem vis para bellum, adapted from a statement found in Roman author Publius Flavius Vegetius Renatus's tract De Re Militari, 4th or 5th century AD. There's some dispute about this, I guess. If you want peace, prepare for war. That sounded like a good song title to me. It was a motto I did with my class, and I loved talking about that phrase and the meaning it could have. So I'm going to play this whole song for you as my last number, and this comes from my most recent album, Infinity Days. The cover of Infinity Days, well, I'll leave it to you to look at and figure out what's going on there. Now's the point I ask myself, where did my pick go? It's not there, it's not there. Oh, there it is. Last pocket I checked. All right. So this song is important to me because it is the threshold between my younger self, where I was an idealist, and a young 20-year-old who went to protests against wars in San Francisco and that kind of thing. And I was a pacifist. And then the Syria war thing happened, and I changed in a way because I realized that sometimes protesting isn't enough because they protested and they got slaughtered. And it made me rethink the possible meaning of that. Paul McCartney said, let it be. That ain't gonna work for me. The call to action can't be ignored. If you want peace, you better prepare for war. Bob Dylan said the answer's blowing in the wind. That won't help to save my dying friend. It don't help to even the score. If you want peace, you better prepare for war. And it's true now, like it was true before. From the Roman kings to the U.S. Senate floor.
John Lennon said, give peace a chance, and that might be the most noble stance, but it don't help to clean the blood off the killing floor. I said, if you want peace, you better prepare for war. And it's true now, like it was true before. From the walls of Troy to that Manhattan Island shore. Oh, Bob Marley said, one love, one heart. That's an ideal that you achieve in art. It's not the world outside my door. I said, if you want peace, you better prepare for war. La 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 la, la 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 la, da 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 da, da 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 da. Oh, Pete Seeger said, if I had a bell, I couldn't hear him 'cause the bombs fell. And I don't think I can sing no more. I said, if you want peace, you better prepare. If you want peace, you better prepare. If you want peace, you better prepare for war. Thank you so much. So obviously on the album cover of Infinity Days was a saying my son would say to me. His name's Jude. And at night when we were talking about plans for the next day, like, can I do this tomorrow or whatever? Like, no. Or like, rather it would be like, can I do this tonight? And I'd be like, maybe tomorrow. He'd be like, what, like infinity days from now? So that's the name of the album, and our god Kronos, the god of time. I could represent time with a clock. I could represent it with an hourglass, but us classicists have better ways to do it. And because there's a god for that, a face and a name for that, and his name is Kronos. And with that reference to Kronos, it appears I am out of time, but feeling very much connected to you all here at the ACL Institute, although we're in different buildings. I want to thank you all really for meeting with me, welcoming me to this. It's been an amazing 3 days, and thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to the Institute. Thank you to Pat McFadden, especially, who invited me. And gratias vobis ago et valete. Thank you very much. Very kind of you.
So thank you so much, Dylan, for that outstanding address. And we're so thankful. You have definitely made a permanent connection with us here at the ACL.